VS Code has a profile switcher now. It's a little underwhelming, but it didn't stop me from creating a Scala profile for you. You might want to stick around, especially if you're new to VS Code or obviously Scala. Let's roll the intro. Hey, Vlad here from devinsideyou.com. Welcome to another video. Over the years, I've built several tools to help you get started with Scala. For example, there is a Nix flake for Scala that installs the JVM and SBT, among other things, without polluting your operating system. There are 2 Jitterid templates for starting new projects in Scala 2 and 3 respectively, and even another one for getting started with clean architecture. There are over 50 install scripts for all kinds of tools, ranging from simply ZSH all the way to a script that sets up your entire Scala development environment with Corsair, if you prefer that over Nix. And now there is a VSCode profile that you can import to bootstrap your own configuration. To be clear, this is not all of my settings and extensions. I took what I had, I cleaned it up, and left only the essentials. So it's not my profile, it's more like a template to bootstrap yours. Let me tell you all about it right after the message from our sponsors, scalajobs.com and rustjobs.dev. Check out the links in the description below if you're looking for a job. This video is also brought to you by awesome people like yourself. Your contributions go right back into this channel. They allow me to pay for a video editor who frees some of my time, which I then again choose to spend with you, whether it's during live streams or answering your questions on Discord. There's many of you and only one of me, so all it takes is $1. Thank you. Now, VS Code has this hierarchy of settings. There is your user settings that you can override in your remote host settings, for example, like WSL, and there is one layer underneath for your workspace settings that you can use again to override the others. And so when I started working on this profile, I was hoping to find yet another layer on top of the user settings. This way you would be able to import my profile and then override a thing or two in your user settings. In other words, I was hoping that you would be able to select multiple profiles, right? You would select mine, which would install a couple of extensions and enable a couple of settings, and then yours depending on mine, and you would be able to override a thing or two. Unfortunately, none of that stuff is possible. You can only select one profile at a time, and what you can do with profiles is pretty basic as well. Maybe they will get improved in the future, but for now, all you can do with them is pretty much CRUD them, export them either to a file or directly to a gist, then import them back either from a file or from a URL, and that URL doesn't even follow redirects. You can rename and delete profiles as well, but you can't do any of that to the default one. Oh, and you cannot import profiles while connected to a remote host like WSL, for instance. You can still use them, they just need to be imported prior to the connection. The best thing you can do with my profile is either, well, just import it and use it directly, or you can import it and rename it, or you can import it and then create another profile based on that. VS Code gives you the ability to either create a profile from scratch or based on another profile, mine in this case. As mentioned in the intro, the VS Code profiles are pretty underwhelming for now, but allow me at least to show you what's inside and also to demo how to install it with and without WSL. In fact, one of the reasons I'm making this video is because I recently made a video about the Nix flake for Scala, and in there we set up an entire development environment in a fresh WSL instance, with the exception of VS Code, because the WSL instance would connect to the VS Code that was on Windows, which was already fully configured, so it was not really fair game. So now we will be able to complete the cycle and get you one step closer to a fully configured Scala environment. All right, so as you can see, I'm on Windows, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start VS Code, and I'm going to make sure that it starts in the new window because I don't want it to open my previous instance. So as of right now, I only have my default profile with my theme, with my settings and stuff. So if you click over here on the settings, which by default is on the left over here, you can see that I have only one profile, which is a default. I can show the contents actually. So you will see that I have, a bunch of settings. You can also click on them, settings, key bindings, some UI state of like what is where, all of my extensions and stuff. All right. The other things that you can do is, obviously CRUD them, right? So you can create a profile either from scratch or based on another profile. You can export profile, you can select what you want to export, and then you can export it either to, okay, so I guess because it's a default, so I'm going to do like blah, and it will ask me if I want to export it. What is it doing now? It's activating some extensions. I don't know why it just did that for now. Let's do it again. So let's do export profile, export, blah. All right, there you go. This is what I should have done in the first place, right? So you can export it either to a gist or to a local file. You can also put it wherever you want. Just make sure when you import it that that there are no redirects. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to import mine, and it's going to fail, right? So we go over here, we go to import profile, or you can also use the command palette, right? So you search for something like import profile. Okay. So I usually create redirects. There is one called code-profile www.devinsaidu.com. And I'm going to copy this whole thing because I know that it's going to fail. Okay, so basically it cannot follow redirects. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to put it. Where am I going to put it? I'm going to put it like over there. Okay, so I'm going to go to the browser over here. I'm going to paste the same thing into the browser, and it's going to redirect to my GitHub repo. And by the way, the reason that I didn't use a gist is because even now you cannot use gist for organizations, even though people have been begging for this for years. Anyway, so it just redirects to the raw version. As you can see, just a bunch of JSON. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to try to import again. And this time I'm going to use my, the raw link, and it shows you what I have. I specifically didn't use any key binding. So basically it's just settings and a bunch of extensions. And if you don't want to import some of them, you can remove the checkbox now, or you can uninstall them later. One of the important ones is actually, we're going to go through them in just a second through all of them, but one of the important ones is WSL. So I installed the whole remote bundle for VS Code. And the reason I did that is that, in a second, I'm going to show you how to do this in WSL, and you cannot import the profile when you're connected to WSL, as already mentioned. Okay, so you need to import it first, and then you can start it from the terminal from WSL, and it won't start if it doesn't already have the WSL extension. Okay, so if you're on the Mac, for example, you might want to remove the one for WSL, which I actually don't see right now. It's probably this one. Whatever. Okay, so let's go through all of the extensions real quick. So this is just a syntax highlighting for Nix. It was tiny, so I decided to include it. This is the date and time extension, just shows you the date and time. Dev containers, to connect to. Maybe this one's actually for WSL and stuff. Docker to show the Docker stuff. Editor config for editor config. If you're not familiar with it, I have a video about it. Arrow lens is an awesome extension for LSP, which basically draws, it paints your errors more beautifully. It's there like inline and stuff. I'll show it to you in a second. Some integration with GitHub, Git lens, some integration with Git. The Hokon colorizer for configurations for Scala applications are often written in this Hokon style, which stands for, I believe, human object config oriented notation or something like that. Live share for pair programming in VS Code. Multi-command is an awesome extension which allows you to bind, to have a command and also to have a key binding bound to that command that would run multiple commands. I'll actually show you why I included this. This is my favorite one by far, called reload. It just puts a reload button that reloads entire VS Code. A bunch of remote stuff. Obviously, Metals, which is pretty much the only extension that you need for to work with Scala. This is a language server for Scala. By the way, this is WSL. I didn't see it before. And, Metals also installs the Scala syntax. Okay. But I didn't want to include just Metals. This basically is not only for, this profile is not only for people who are new to Scala. This is also for new people to VS Code. So I included a couple of others like GitLens and GitHub. Okay. Settings, I tried to be very minimalistic. I tried not to include, tabs or spaces, but in the end, I couldn't resist. Okay. So this is like, 72 lines over here. So we're going to go through all of them real quick. So in diff editor, I don't want to ignore the trim white spaces. I want to detect indentation. So I set up, spaces, 2 spaces. Feel free to argue in the comments. But if I open a file that is already formatted with tabs, I don't want to change it. Okay, so therefore detect indentation is true. Drag and drop false, it always gets in the way. Increase the font a little bit. By default, it's super tiny. Like I'm on a 15-inch laptop, and by default, it was like 14. Format on everything, paste, save. The save mode is file so that it doesn't try to format only part of the file. I saw it fail multiple times. Format on type, indent size to insert spaces true. So I believe this one, when you press tab, it actually inserts spaces. I'm not sure. Minimap max column 100. I believe it will hide it if it's more than 100 lines. It's also a little bit compatible with the Jitrate templates that I created. If you're not familiar, Jitrate is a templating program, so it's frequently used to set up like Scala projects. And in there, like I have a couple of them, and both of them they have. The line limit is like at 100, so I put it like to 100 over here. Choose slider always. Size fit. This is actually a really good one. So even if you have a file that has like 5,000 lines, then you're not going to need to scroll inside of the minimap, right? So the minimap will always like start here and end over here. Okay, so you'll see the whole thing in there. Render white space is trailing, right? So if you have like trailing, this is a read-only mode. So I wanted to show it to you. Maybe we should import it. Let's import it and then we'll go through the settings. So importing profile, as you can see over here, it applies the extensions. For some reason, it takes a couple of seconds, but whatever. Maybe in the meantime, I can keep going. So we have a ruler at 100. There we go. So now it's switched. It tells sometimes to actually reload VS Code. I don't know why it doesn't tell me to do this now, but I think I will do this anyway because it's always a good idea to reload. All right. So now that it's reloaded, maybe we can open the settings, profile settings, open current profile settings. There we go. So as you can see, it's like kind of tiny. Like I put it to like 18 and stuff. So let's close it. So we see this line at 100. Snippet suggestions, right? So anytime there's like a suggestion, like see how it's now at the top, and usually I want to see the things that are at the top, so they will be rendered at the bottom. Sticky scroll is a really cool thing. I can't really, well, I can demonstrate. So if I'm going to scroll down over here so that I will stop seeing the beginning of this, the sticky scroll will show it to me anyway. Over here, as you can see, right? So I don't see the beginning, but the sticky scroll shows it to me. It's really, really cool. I really recommend it for everybody to try. Tab size 2, again, you can change it to use tab stops false. Again, you can change it. Encoding should always be UTF-8. Line ending should be like Linux and Mac, not the Windows ones. Insert new line at the end, final new line. This is, by the way, one of those like ancient things in programming. Many tools, especially command line tools, they work much better if your files end with an empty line, right? So most editors, they have the setting. You should always enable it. Trim final new lines as well, very important, right? So if I have a bunch of new lines, if I say the file, they will be removed. You don't want, basically, most of my settings are optimized in such a way that they don't create unnecessary diffs, okay? Excluding a bunch of files from the watchers. Most of it is like Scala stuff, and the same thing over here. Like when we search, I don't want to search in in the target directory, in the metals directory, and whatever. These two are two of my favorite ones. I have an entire Git crash course here. Well, it's not actually a crash course. It's a full course. It's like 16 videos, 8 hours. It's free here on YouTube. Check it out. These two settings basically very often change the ground under you, and so they mess with rebases and stuff. So I don't want anything to happen automatically behind my back. So auto fetch is false. I don't want to update the pull request. Always false. Okay. Git lens, code lens enable. So Git lens is an awesome extension. Among other things, it shows you the Git blame over here in line. And one of the annoying things that it does, it inserts lenses above the commits. And I don't like anything that changes the vertical formatting of the code, because what happens then is that everything starts jumping around. Okay. In fact, there's this one thing in metals that cannot be disabled because this is kind of like a VS Code limitation, but they did it much better in Neovim. I'll show it to you unless I forget in a second. Okay. Metals indent on paste. That's kind of straightforward. This one I left for you to enable because I didn't want to enable it for you, but I wanted to make you aware of it. It's the same thing. So there's a super method lens. Again, it changes the whole vertical, the code jumps around all the time, right? Because when the lenses are rendered, all of a sudden, it creates basically new lines in between. So I recommend that you disable it, but I don't want to disable it for you because you might be new to Scala and you might want to see that a method has a parent, and so I'll show you how to set up a key binding to actually go to that parent instead of relying on the lens and instead of clicking on the lens. This one is for the multi-command plugin. So basically over here we're defining a command that when triggered, right? So you can search for it. Maybe hold on, execute multi-command. There we go. Okay, there it is, multi-command toggle info. I'll show you how to set up a key binding to do this because metals can show you a bunch of extra stuff like implicit conversions, implicit parameters, show infer types, and I prefer to have a key binding to to enable and disable them because it can be a lot. Okay, so I'll show you how to enable and disable all three of them at the same time. In fact, one of my very first shorts on this channel was about this. We're pretty much done. So show current and status true. So if you have a problem, I want to see it over here in the status bar as well. And also I want to highlight modified tabs. Okay, so obviously you can change all of that stuff. And that's pretty much it, right? So if you're in Windows or on a Mac, that's it. Like you have imported this profile. So now what you can do, as you can see, it's actually on the left. So as you can see, now it's dev inside. You could rename it, for example, if you want. I'm not going to do this now, but you could. All right. So the next thing that I'm going to show you is how to do this in WSL. So I've already imported the profile. This is very important. So over here, what you see, where is it? Where is it? Over here. So this is a WSL distribution that I created yesterday. So the only thing that it has, I just ran the updates. I installed Nix. I enabled flakes. I downloaded this flake. I created an empty Scala 3 project. Basically, pretty much exactly the same thing as we have done in this in this Nix Flake video. Okay, so this over here is, this is an NSBT project. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start Visual Studio Code, and this has never been started in this distribution before. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to say profile, and I'm going to say dev inside because this is the name of the profile. I'm going to ask it to open this current directory. Okay, so as you can see, it was never started here before, so it has to install this stuff. And there we go. We have this profile. Okay, and the way WSL works is that if you go to extensions over here, right? So we have like locally installed. So locally, you have like all of these like extensions that I just showed you that come from my profile. Okay, but what it's installed in WSL is nothing, right? So there's nothing in there. But fortunately, this is how VS Code works. Fortunately, it gives you like these helpful buttons over here. So basically, you go through all of the extensions and you click on install on all of them. We might or we might not need to reload at the end of this procedure. But one of the extensions, actually the last one over here, is Metals. So as soon as we install Metals, it will realize that we're inside of a Scala project, and we'll actually start importing the profile. Okay, so it says unable to find a Java 11 or Java 17. This is actually my fault because I was supposed to start the Nix profile. Okay, and I didn't do this. So Nix, there we go. So I was supposed to do this. I forgot to do that. So, but from now on, you can actually just do code dot. You don't need to specify the profile because I believe it will just start the previous one. Yep, it did. Okay, so yeah, so basically I already have JVM installed, and as you can see, so now I realize that it's there. It installs Metals. It will once it is installed, it will ask me to import the build. Actually, while it does this, I'm going to type a little bit of code because I want to show you that thing was the code lenses. Okay, so this is Scala 3, so I'm going to say trade foo. I'm going to say, yep, there we go, exactly, import build. By the way, this is ArrowLens over here, right? So it talks to the language server. Actually, right now it actually just talks to the syntax highlighting thing because the metals didn't finish it. Okay, but we already see the arrows in line. Okay, so I'm just going to say dev foo produces a unit. And over here, I'm going to say class, full implementation, extends foo. And over here, I'm going to say override. We already have help over here. And I'm just going to say something like print line foo. Okay. So once I save the file and once Metals finishes here, finishes the install, finishes the compilation. Okay, over here. So this is exactly what I meant. It's kind of tiny. I'm going to increase the font a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to remove this thing. Okay. So as you can see, like this is exactly this lens. Okay. So if I click over here, I will jump to the, to the actual declaration. All right. Come on. Why doesn't it work? I don't know, because maybe Metals didn't finish yet. We also don't see these lenses. So let's see, maybe we can ask it to cascade. Okay. I don't see the Metals commands. Okay. There we go. Metals cascade compile. Okay, there we go. I also call the project profile, which is why it says compiling profile. So downloading some more stuff. As you can see, like these are like those vertical things. And like as soon as they were rendered, the whole code was like jumping around. Okay, so if you click over here, it will jump over there. So as you can see, the cursor jumped over there. So I prefer to actually, I don't know why we cannot see this, but if you open the current profile, so this commented line, I actually prefer to have it disabled, right? So at least this one goes away, and then we would have a key binding that would allow us to go there. Okay, so I'm actually going to search for a key binding. By the way, I pressed Control-Shift-P to search for this. Okay, developer, no preferences, keyboard shortcuts. We can go with JSON, but I'm going to go with this one. So we're going to set up two key bindings. The first one is for go to super method, which is that one. So I'm just going to go click here, and I set it to Control-Shift-B. There's one existing one. Which one? Okay, so I guess I'm going to remove that, remove key binding. Okay, so let's search for it again. Go to super method, that one, Control-Shift-B. There you go. Oops, I think I should have pressed enter, Control-Shift-B. And another one that we're going to set is going to be toggle info. And we need the one from multi-command, okay? And I chose a chord, so I do Control-KM, okay? But you can obviously choose whatever you want. This is also why I didn't want to include key bindings. Also, you might be on a Mac, so your key bindings might be different for you, okay? All right, So if we go back over here, so now if I do Control-Shift-B, it will jump from here to here. So I never actually need the lenses. Okay, I just go like this. Okay, and another one is Control-KM, and I will actually enable the screencast mode. Okay, screencast, toggle screencast mode. Okay, Okay, so I'm gonna press Control-KM. Okay, and as you can see, now these metal settings were enabled to show me this stuff. Actually, VS Code does this. I don't know why, but it does this in such a way that these settings are now like local over here. So there's the settings JSON, right? And so every time I do Control-KM, it actually changes them here. Okay, so I'm gonna go over here, Control-KM, Control-KM. If you have a larger project, give it a second because it might, it might take some time to actually render them. Let me know in the comments below if there's an extension that I've forgotten, or maybe there's a setting that I should have included. Also, I opened a GitHub issue for the redirect, so you might be able to import my profile by using my URL instead of the raw URL if you're watching this video a couple of years from now. But I'll include the links to both of them in the description, also to the repo itself. As with most of my starter templates and this thing now, I'll try to keep it as up to date as possible. So if you're watching this video a couple of years from now, the list of extensions might be different. The settings might have changed as well. I'm the guy who always who always reads changelog. So every time there's some new VS Code feature, I always try it out. So if I think that it's something something cool for the new people who are who are not familiar with every little checkbox that you can tick in the VS Code settings, then I might include it. Okay, and if you haven't renamed it, then when you import it again, actually we might do it now. So if I go over here and I will say import profile, and I paste it again, so it will tell me that it already exists. Oh, I'm inside of WSL, so so I cannot do this. Okay, so let's actually go over here. I'm going to start code again. I'm going to have a new window over here, right? Because if you try to import it in WSL, it won't work. Okay, so let's give it a second to load all my extensions and stuff. Yep, there we go. Okay, let's try it now. So if we're going to import a profile and do this, and it will tell me that it already exists, right? So then I can either override or I can create a new profile, right? So if you haven't renamed mine, then you might be able to keep it up to date. But I don't recommend it you do this because you should create your profile based on mine. You shouldn't change mine or keep mine around. All right. I hope you enjoyed this one. Check out the previous one, and I see you in the next one. For now, as always, it's been Vlad from devinside.com. Don't forget to like this video if you did, subscribe if you want to improve the developer inside you, and if you wish to contribute to tech education, please consider doing so on Patreon or GitHub sponsors, and watch my videos before everyone else. And most importantly, take care.